Okay, hopefully you can all hear me through the mic okay. I'm doing it because I don't like to just stand still too much, so I'll move around and talk a bit. So I'm going to be giving, my name's Phil Hearsum. I work for Axelos and have done so for several years now, and I was in the cabinet office before then, and I was back in the OGC days, so I've been there a little while. I've been involved in ITIL for several years now. I was one of the lead architects for ITIL 4, so that's kind of my history. So, okay, we'll go through the slides. Can we get slide 1, please? That's me. There you go. As you can see, I'm getting uglier by the day. ITIL 4 lead architect, managing professional, strategic leader, all that kind of stuff. That kind of comes with the territory, really. So I won't go too much into that. Yes, please. So when we're talking about this is just kind of a really concept slide, really. I mean, what we're trying to do all the time is to bend over backwards, to do things, to be, is this what we mean by agile? Is it kind of just bending over backwards to do what we can for the company, or is it actually moving forward? And I mean, I think this is quite a nice concept about the fact that we're trying to do something different. We're trying to do something to kind of keep things going. So it was just a little bit of kind of humour to start the talk, really. Yes, please. So one of the key questions we've got is, what is value? What are we actually looking to provide? And I think this is key to everything we do. Yes, please. Value is perceived. It's perceived by the customers that you have, and it's perceived by the organisation that you do. A lot of it now, and we talk about customer experience, etc. So the value you provide is a perceived value. And we have to understand one of the key concepts that we have within ITIL 4 is the idea of co-created value. You can't create value. Your organisation can't create value. What it can do is create something that enables value to be created. If we have a conference like this today and you get the best speakers in the world and they come along and they talk and there's nobody here listening to you, no value has been provided. It's only when you get the interaction from one side to the other you get value. So value is perceived, and that links in with co-creation. Yes, please. And it's subjective. What is it you're actually looking for? We've talked about outcomes earlier on, and outcomes are very important. There's a classic story that was said by Dave Cannon when he was doing ITIL strategy in 3. And we were looking about what outcomes were, and one of the things he gave as an example was, he said, if you have a hotel, and you're building a hotel, and you build it and you have the best waitresses, you have the best restaurant, you have the best cleaners, the rooms are lovely, the restaurant's magnificent. All of these are outputs that you're providing. If nobody stays at your hotel, you've failed. And that could be because of a factor you haven't looked at. For example, where is it? It might be built in the middle of a swamp, or it's in an area that's a rough area of town. But you have to look at that, which is why outcomes are so important. It's what you're trying to do. In the case I've just said, you're trying to get people to come and stay at your hotel and hopefully come back and talk to their friends and get this co-created value going. So it's not just about the outputs. Yes, please. We all kind of work, we're all in little groups. We all kind of, talk amongst ourselves. We all do things, both inside the organisation and in life. We're kind of there as individual little groups. Yes, please. But the bit of it is, and it should come up, but these are collaborative networks. These little networks, especially if you're talking inside your organisation, are communicating with other little networks that sit outside there. And I think this is one of the dangers we get into, and I'll talk a bit more about that coming up at the moment, which is you've got to be careful in your organisation that you don't come out with highly effective silos that are looking, they've got the team that can provide what they want, they've got their own set of goals, and they go down to do those goals, and they're not looking what the organisation is doing as a whole. They're focused on the outcome that they want to do. And if you're not careful, that can drive the idea of silos appearing, and obviously silos is not a good thing. Yes, please. There's also the fact that we've talked a lot about agility and who is agile and what is agile. But an organisation, one organisation can't all work the same way. I'll be amazed if there's many organisations that are completely agile, and I'll be amazed if there aren't organisations that are completely traditional. They work in different ways. Yes, please. It's a bit like the interior of a clock. You've got large cogs that go slowly backwards and forwards. You've got little ones that go really quick. You've got dials and stuff. But all of those things working together produces what your organisation supplies. Yes, please, next slide. Sorry, and the next one. So there can be many different ways of working in there. You don't all have to be agile. You don't all have to be traditional, more kind of slow motion. You can have the different things working, and it's recognising how those things work and also how they work together to produce what your organisation wants. Yes, please. And in the case we're looking at this, we're all the same, part of the same organisation, and the clock face is basically what the outside world sees. This is what they actually look at. They're seeing this organisation tells me the time, tells me what the time is, it's accurate to this amount, that's what I want to see. How the things go on at the background is not necessarily what people are looking at. So you have to understand that. You have to get these things working in sync, working together. Yes, please. The other thing as well, we all want the same thing. We're driven now more than we ever have been by what the organisational needs are, what the organisation wants, and ultimately that's what the customer wants. Because as I said, you're looking for this co-creation, you're looking to get customers, you're also looking to retain customers. We all know now that customer experience and the way you hold on to customers is one of the most important things. We all have apps on your phone, and the moment it doesn't work, you get another app in, because you know you can get it. Same with your electric bill, etc., utilities. We all swap at a drop of a hat because well, you don't at the moment because we're in a different time, but you normally can swap at a drop of a hat and you look at things like price. But if you've got services and you've got things that they do for you above and beyond the norm, that can also make an effect. So we want the same thing. We want a fast, efficient organisation that gives customers what they want, is profitable, etc. That's what we're all there for. Thank you. So, culture, right? We've talked about culture and some of the other things today, but culture is very important. An organisation needs an agile culture. If you're going to do anything with agility, you need an agile culture. Things like the no-blame environment. Failure is good if it's used correctly. All of this kind of thing is a culture. It's no good going, we're going to go down this fast lane and kind of do all these wonderful quick things if the culture of the organisation isn't there. We need multifunctional teams understand their goals. They need to understand what they're doing, but they also need to understand where they fit into the whole, what contribution they're making to everybody. And that's one of the things I said about you've got to avoid the siloed effect. You can run into silos. And an environment where there's understanding of people, technology, processes, suppliers. These are the kind of things you'll see in the 4 domains within ITIL. And we've taken the emphasis off process and we put them into practices. And practices are around how your processes interact with people, with technology, with suppliers to actually produce a practice. So we've tried to move away from the whole idea of here's a 20-point practice that you follow rigidly as you go down, and you build it into how good your people are, how much knowledge they've got, how agile they are, how they can make their correct decisions around what actual technology you've got that can aid you in these kind of things, and what your supplier can offer. So it's very much about tailoring, which when you look on agile is what you want. You want these teams to be able to interact and do things in a very fast and agile way. And that means they have to have these things to do that. I think there was something that, on the last point, there was something that Karen said that I didn't quite agree with. I mean, she said some things later on, but I think the idea when you have this command and control or whatever at the top as a bad thing, I don't agree. What I think you want a definite command and control at the top, but what you want is the light touch with it going down. And I think that what the organisation needs to do in governance is looking at the vision of what the company wants and where it's going, to set some rules and examples and things what they want done and how they want doing. But what I think you do then is you evolve that down to the team to control it. But I think you have to have that governance from above sitting in there so that they know what they're doing. I think the idea of giving the teams more responsibility to interpret that governance and to sort it out, which again Karen spoke of later on the way down, when she talked about cultural agreements, etc. I think that is the way you need to look at it. But I do think that there is sometimes a focus that kind of says, no, you don't need governance, and control is a big thing you don't really need. I think you do. It's just that you go down to these kind of agreements and you put that down to the teams. You make them understand what is needed of you on a governance way, and then you get them to kind of control it on a day-to-day basis. Yes, please. Pitfalls within Agile. Creation of Agile silos, it should be, sorry. Agile and dedicated teams driven to achieve their goals. It's like, what am I looking at? I'm looking at doing this. I'm going to drive myself forward to do that, and I might not understand the kind of holistic view of what's going on in the organisation, or what my particular goal is at that moment. How is that affecting somebody else? And that moves into kind of lean areas. Are you producing bottlenecks elsewhere? Are you doing things that are kind of driving outside of your area, but you're focused on your goals? A view that Agile is brilliant, anything else is old-fashioned, right? As I said earlier on, there is a whole thing within an organisation. There are areas that will be extremely Agile, there'll be areas that aren't. I suggest that the team controlling the nuclear control rods won't have a particularly Agile way of working, because if you fail fast, then you might not be able to recover it so quick. But it's an understanding of where they fit in. It's understanding that Agile is good, Agile is great, but there are some other things that might need a difference to it. And so you can't have this thing, Agile, yay, anything else, no. It's kind of a balance between the two. And also the understanding of cultural requirements is again a big pitfall. It goes back to a bit what was said earlier on. It's about buzzwords. It's kind of like, as we had in the slide from Karen, somebody goes to a conference and comes back and says, Agile's great, we're going to do it, we've got this amount of time, away you go. And if the culture of the organisation doesn't support that, then you can be in trouble. And this drive towards agility, well, it's the same kind of thing really. The drive towards agility without understanding what that actually entails. What does it mean to be agile? What does it actually entail doing? A reduction on governance. If you're agile, you don't need governance, do you? It just slows you down. Governance doesn't have to slow you down, right? If you have a governance situation that just says, don't do this and make sure that's done and make sure this is okay, you can devolve that to a team that can be done virtually on the spot. Bang, yes, I'm happy with that. But to do that, the team has to understand what the governance is they're actually following, and actually have to understand what they're doing and how that relates. So as long as you've got that, your governance can be quicker. It can be more efficient. But you can't just kind of go, governance slows you down, we're going to kind of skip away, just produce stuff and that'll be fine. So I think there's a pitfall. Some people, again, and it goes back to not quite understanding what it is. And again, Agile a buzzword. I mean, that's, I've through my times, I've had so many buzzwords that have come up, including ITIL. And it's just like, yeah, we'll do ITIL. And it's kind of like, right, we're going to do ITIL next week. And then you hear, it doesn't work. It's just, it's bureaucratic, it does X, it does Y, and usually that's because they're trying to fit it in just because they've heard about it. Yes, please. So we all know, I'm hoping at least most of you have got a kind of a basic understanding of ITIL 4. So I'm looking at the guiding principles. And I really like the guiding principles. If there's one real thing about ITIL that I kind of would ask everybody to look at, it's the guiding principles, because I think they work as something that you do in a day-to-day life. I think they also work in your private life as well. If you're trying to do something, if you're trying to build a man cave out in your garden, then, start where you are, see what you've got, progress iteratively with feedback, speak to the wife and say, I'm going to put this out there and I'm going to do this, and then a little bit later maybe put a fridge with beers in, and see how that's going. So anyway, so I'm going to look at some of these in a kind of an agile way, and I think Karen spoke about one in there where she said about, there's one around start where you are, just as an additional one. It's true, if you're actually doing something and you're going to change or move or go somewhere else, look what you're doing well to start with. Don't reinvent the wheel, don't throw everything, baby out with the bathwater. Look where you are now, and then progressively with feedback to get to the goal, the state that you want to get in. But if we can go to the next one, please. So, understanding the needs of multiple stakeholders. Yes, please, sorry, there's going to be a few quickies on this one. So, think and work holistically. And that is this whole idea about if you're an agile team, how are you still affecting other people? And again, it was spoken of earlier on about, and I think it was Karen again, that said about notifying outsiders. And it's that view that you need to work holistically. You need for the organisation to understand what you're doing and where you're going. And focus on value. What am I actually trying to produce at the end of this? And don't forget, value is not necessarily monetary. There's a whole range of things that are value. It could be regulatory. So you're doing something that's going to abide by a regulatory condition. It could be environmental. It could be some sustainability thing that you're doing that might not actually produce a huge income, but will actually affect your view out there. It could be, well, any of the PESTLE model really, it could be political, you know, but you have to look at these kind of things. And it also could be particular stakeholders. It could be that your CEO wants X done. And so, you know, basically that's what you've got to do because he wants you to do it. So there's a value provided for him. If you ever look at the ITIL SVS, you will see that the organisation always starts with an opportunity or a demand and always has to end in value. And I think that's where I go slightly outside of Karen, because I believe when you talk about agile service management, you're talking about the whole piece. So you're talking about service management that actually looks at opportunities coming in and then looks at how you go through the system and you look at value streams, etc. And you're working out how is this going to work? Is it going to happen? Can we do it quickly? There's feedback loops and continuous improvement. And things like DevOps, in effect, sit in an area in the middle there of actually do it. But there's a whole range of things that sits round in what I call agile service management that is geared up to, can we do this? Can we do it quickly? How would we do that? Is it worth it? What are we actually looking to achieve? These kind of things sit round outside of just DevOps. DevOps is important, but DevOps is one bit inside an actual agile service management thing. It's the how you do it at the end. It's a physical thing. But the bits about are you going to do it? Why are you doing it? You know, what opportunities are you looking for? How are you? All of these kind of things and the governance areas, all this kind of stuff sits around it before you go, yes, we're going to move into this area or we're going to do anything else. Yes, please. And creating a shared understanding across multiple stakeholders. And again, please. So, again, Karen said earlier on, keep it simple. We go slightly different on that in so much that we add something to it. It says, and practical. And what we mean by this is, in ITIL, that principle comes up as, keep it simple when you've looked at the complexity. So don't just do something because it's simple. Go in and say, these are the 50 things that look in there, and then kind of like, do we really need to do these? What do we need? And go down to something that's simple and practical. So it works and it's simple. Don't just kind of go, we're going to give you something that's kind of, you know, a nice, very quick. Make sure it goes down as narrow as you can, as simplistic as you can without losing anything. And collaborate and promote visibility. Again, that goes back to think and work holistically, in so much that tell everybody why you're doing it, what area you're heading for, what's going on, what's the kind of thing you're doing. It's not a question of getting permission to do it. It's just telling people this is where we're going, this is what we're doing, and how you move it across. Yes, please. And adopting new technologies. Yes, please. So, got several on here. Keep it simple and practical. One of the things over here, again, Karen spoke of, about automation. But I think it's important that we look to optimize first. So if you've got a manual task that needs to be done, optimize it and then automate it, because it will be twice as effective. If it's a slimmed down work, it actually works, this is what it is in its optimum form, you can automate that and it will work a lot better. So I would add that to any time you say automate something, is don't forget to do the optimization first. Make it as nice and clean and what you can, and then give it to a machine to do it for you. And that's a very important. Focus on value crops up just all over the place, because there's a thing in there that says if you're not doing something, that's something that we all say you should ask yourself, I'm doing X, why am I doing it? What value am I getting? And it could be as simple as, you know, your CEO wants it. But you should understand what value you're doing. If you do, you're gonna kind of progress quicker doing it, because you understand what you're doing and where you fit in. I mean, to what level that is, I don't, you know, is varied on what you're doing. But you should have some understanding of what you're doing and why. Yes, please. So what does a service system look like? Yes, please. Sorry. This is what we talked about a minute ago, or I did anyway. There's an opportunity demand. And this could be an opportunity in the business, it could be a demand, it could be an incident or a problem coming through that produces opportunity demand. It goes through this lot, comes out, must have value at the other end. You must define what that value is, and really it should have something in there. But that's where we talk about the whole thing around whether you look at the opportunity and say, are we going to do anything with it? You should look and say, what can we do, how would we do it, and what value would that provide? And if it doesn't provide value, then why are you doing it? Guiding principles sit on the outside. You've got governance. As I said, I think it's important you've got a governance layer in there, if only to understand what you're doing and how you're doing it, and the rules and things you've got on it. Practices, which again are processes, people, technology, etc. So they're, instead of doing the old process, and I think that's one of the things we got a lot of problem with ITIL 3, for example, was that you have an example in the book that says here's a 100-page incident process. And then everybody started putting in the ITIL process for incident management. And it was really an example, but everybody looked at it. So we've tried to kind of back off a bit from that and say, you need to tailor it yourself based on the quality of your people, the training, what they understand. Things like, big thing at the moment is about intelligent disobedience on service desk, for example. The whole idea that if you've got proper people in there and the process says that, you know, if this happens, then you put it out for a priority 3 and someone will fix it within 2 days. But there's a bit that says, no, actually, if you're talking to that person and you think there's a proper reason why, you know, that it doesn't fit into that. So my printer's not working. Look at your thing and it says, yeah, that's a severity 3 days. But you're talking about someone who's got a large contract that they need to print, for example. I mean, I know it's a very easy one, but the whole idea of enabling and your staff on service desk, for example, to go, no, I'm going to go outside of this process because I recognise this. And having this thing about failing fast, if you then, the manager of that team thinks they've made a mistake, you're not in a blame culture, but you say to them, why did you do this? And if they go for this, you kind of think, no, I wouldn't do that again. Or, yeah, that's great. You've really, you know. And when you're talking certainly about external customers, going back to this retention and experience and things like that, sometimes the idea of this, this kind of educational or intelligent disobedience can help in that area. But these are things that sit around people inside practices. Have you got people can make those decisions, can back them up, can do them? If they can, they should be able to override the process. Have you got the tools to give you the ability to look at the things that's going on? Have you got partners that deal with it? So that's a whole package, and we're trying to move away from the 1 to 10 process that you kind of go through. And I think that's really important again with high value teams and agile type teams. You don't want somebody just kind of going, no, I'm going to ignore a governance rule, but you want them to be able to do slight deviations if they think that you know, they've got a really good reason for doing it. So therefore it all fits around that kind of stuff. And then at the bottom, which obviously is fundamental to everything you do, is continual improvement. And there is, of course, a feedback loop that comes from value back to opportunity demand, and you could almost say through continual improvement, because something that happens that ends up producing a value the other side might then produce another opportunity or demand, and that opportunity and demand might just be a continual improvement opportunity demand by just doing X to kind of get through. Yes, please. So we can kind of skip through these relatively because I've rambled on about them, but how do we approach, how do we convert opportunity into demand? Service value chain I didn't speak about, but you all know that. That's the bit that goes in there and says, how do we engage with the customer? How do we do it? How do we build the solution, etc. Sits in the centre. Practice spoke about, and continuing improvement. And as it says, how can we do better is what it is. How can we make a small change that iteratively makes us better? Yes, please. So I'm kind of coming to the end, you'll all be glad to know. I'll kind of put some key takeaways as far as I was concerned about this. I tried not to go too much into having 10 slides all about ITIL and how it all fits in, and tried to be a bit more kind of overarching or viewing from above. So the key takeaways are, please. Right. So agility is a good thing. Yeah, I think that's a key takeaway. It is. It is a very good thing, but in the right place, or in the right area. You have to make sure that the area you're looking at is fit for Agile, has got the culture for Agile. You know, as I said, don't do the nuclear control rods, for example. It's a silly example, but it's a good one. Put good governance in there. And by good governance, I don't mean tight governance and controlled, heavy governance. I mean good governance, which is, these are the kind of things we're looking at, these are the outcomes, this is what we want to do, this is how your team can do them. And as I said, Karen's, what she put in there is exactly that kind of thing. The whole idea of that cultural agreement. We'll let you do this if you can confirm you've done this. So that gives the power to the team, but you should still have that governance in there. So good governance, I mean by that, it's got to be a culture. It's got to be a culture. You can't have no blame culture if there is a blame culture. You can't have fail fast if there's 3 weeks of inquests. Equally, I mean, I don't know, you know, at Facebook, etc. at the moment, they've said, haven't they, officially, that it was a change that caused this to go down, although there is suspicion. There's talk about the fact that they think it might have been an attack even, but they're at the moment saying that it was a change that did it. So I'm guessing that somewhere there's something that said, you know, you changed the configuration on our system and knocked us out for 8 hours globally. I reckon... I don't know, Zuckerberg, they reckon, has lost £7 billion on that outage. I don't know what they mean by 7 billion, you know, or does that actually, oh, sorry, 4 billion. Does that actually mean physically he's 4 billion less, or is it? Yeah, but he's lost 4 billion. So I'm guessing that, you know, that failed fast. It would be failed fast and you didn't recover very quick. Right, so there's all these kind of things. Agility needs to be planned and controlled. And that's the whole idea about, you get a team in together, you train them up on what you want to do, you set the goals, they understand what they're doing, you build the team, and then you let them go and let them get on with what they're producing in the team. But that's why I mean planned and controlled. And again, which is back to what I said at the beginning, that it's done for the right reasons and not just because it's the buzzword at the moment. It's something that you actually understand what you need to do, you're willing to put the commitment in to do it, and you know, you're not just kind of expecting to just go, we're all Agile now, 2 weeks later after you go in. Yes, please. And on the converse side, I mean, they're the same ones really, but Agile in the wrong areas. I spoke about that a minute. I know I've said this before, but I've heard more about it recently, about and it's not a big occurrence, it's a rare occurrence, but I have heard it more about teams that are so focused on their outcomes as an Agile team that they're producing bottlenecks elsewhere, or they're just kind of not working holistically within the organisation, and it's started to cause problems. And I wouldn't say that it's a major problem in the Agile field yet, but it's something that, having heard a bit about it, is something I think we have to watch out for in the future. We have to just make sure that if you are in those kind of high-value teams, that you still understand what the organisation's goals are. Business culture is not set up to facilitate it. We are talking, after all, about business. Is the business actually ready for this? Are the actual senior executives ready for this? Do they understand what it is? So there's that cultural thing. If it's unplanned and just kind of scattergun, so you'll make that agile. Why not do that one agile? You know, and if you're just doing it again in this kind of scattergun approach, I think that it can, because it needs to be, even if you're a small, quick-moving cog in that clock, it has to fit in with others. So I do think that business needs to understand and target it. And being used because it's the latest buzzword, and I've said that before, but we've had that. As I said, I can remember way back in the day when I first started in ITIL, it was all kind of, you know, ITIL doesn't work, so what have you done? Well, we sent 4 people on a foundation course and we haven't saved any money at all. And we, you know, and I think to a degree there's a bit of that in Agile sometimes. It's like, we're going to go Agile. I mean, again, Karen spoke about it with the emu, and the, you know, it's like, we're going to go Agile. You've got 2 years to go and do it. Where you go? You know, it's, so yeah. Yes, please. I think I might be near the end now. I am, yes. So that's the end of it. Hopefully that's been interesting, but if there's any questions, which I'm sure there will be, then I'll pass them to Mark.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Phil. That's excellent insight there to round us off.